The old Victorian house stood at the edge of a desolate forest, its charm irresistible to Claire and David. It was the perfect spot for their weekend getaway. The Airbnb listing had been enticing: antique decor, modern amenities, and glowing reviews that raved about the house's character. Strangely, none of the reviews were recent, but the price was unbeatable, and they figured it was simply a hidden gem. As they pulled into the gravel driveway, the house loomed before them, its wooden exterior weathered but inviting. A chill hung in the air, but they dismissed it as the November wind. Inside, the house was just as described, beautifully furnished yet eerily quiet. The host had left a handwritten note on the table. "Welcome! Make yourself at home. If you need anything, feel free to reach out." There was no sign of anyone else, which suited them just fine. They unpacked, cooked dinner, and spent the first night curled up by the fireplace, enjoying the crackling warmth. The isolation felt cozy, not unnerving. But the second night was different. It began with noises, soft at first, like the creaking of old wood. Claire thought it was the wind, but the sounds grew sharper, deliberate footsteps pacing above them. "Did you hear that?" Claire asked, glancing at David. He shrugged, trying to brush it off. "It's an old house, probably just settling." Yet the rhythm of the steps was too steady, too human. Later, as they prepared for bed, Claire double-checked the locks on the doors. Something about the house felt off. She couldn't put her finger on it, but the air was heavy, as though they weren't alone. David teased her for being paranoid, but she insisted on locking the bedroom door. Sometime after midnight, Claire woke with a start. The room was freezing cold. She reached for David, but he was still sound asleep. Then she noticed the door, wide open. Her stomach dropped. She swore she had locked it. Heart pounding, she got up to close it. But as she stepped into the hallway, she froze. Faint whispers drifted through the air, too soft to make out, but undeniably there. They seemed to come from everywhere surrounding her. She slammed the door shut and locked it again, crawling back into bed, trembling. Morning brought little relief. Over breakfast, Claire told David what had happened, but he dismissed it, chalking it up to her imagination. Still uneasy, she wandered the house while David scrolled on his phone. That's when she saw it. Faint scratches on the dining room wall. She leaned closer, her breath catching as she read the words etched into the paint. "We were fooled. Leave now." Her blood ran cold. She called for David, who came running. "Look at this," she said, pointing at the wall. He frowned. "It's probably been there for years. This place is old, remember?" But Claire wasn't convinced. The scratches looked fresh, as though made recently. They decided to contact the host, but their messages went unanswered. David tried calling the number listed on the Airbnb app, but the line was dead. Frustrated, they debated whether to leave, but David insisted they were overreacting. "We paid for the weekend. Let's not let a few creaks ruin it," he said. Reluctantly, Claire agreed to stay, though the pit in her stomach only grew. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the house seemed to change. The walls felt closer, the shadows darker. The electricity failed without warning, plunging the house into pitch darkness. David grabbed a flashlight from their bag, the beam illuminating little more than the immediate area around them. "Let's just go," Claire whispered. David hesitated but nodded, sensing her fear. As they headed for the front door, they passed through the parlor and froze. The portraits on the walls had changed. Earlier they had been quaint, sepia-toned photographs of past guests smiling warmly. Now the faces were twisted in terror, their expressions frozen in silent screams. Worse, their eyes seemed to follow Claire and David as they moved. "What the hell is this?" David stammered, backing away. Before Claire could respond, the whispers returned, louder this time. They weren't just whispers anymore. They were anguished screams, overlapping and echoing in a deafening cacophony. The house felt alive, the walls vibrating with fury. Panicked, they bolted for the door, but it slammed shut before they could reach it. David yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. The flashlight flickered, then died, leaving them in complete darkness. "David!" Claire screamed, gripping his arm. Suddenly, the air grew icy, their breath visible in the dim light of the moon filtering through the curtains. A new sound emerged, a low, guttural growl, as though something inhuman was watching them. The parlor walls began to shift, the scratched warnings multiplying, overlapping in frantic chaos. "Run! They won't let you go!" Then they saw it. Reflected in the cracked glass of an old mirror was their own image, but it wasn't them. Their reflections looked pale, gaunt, their faces devoid of life. Claire reached out to touch the mirror, but her hand passed through the surface like water. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "This can't be real." Before they could comprehend what was happening, the house swallowed them whole. The parlor faded into darkness, and the portraits on the walls shifted once more. Two new faces appeared, their expressions frozen in the same look of terror as those who came before. Outside, the house stood silent and still, waiting for its next guests. The Airbnb listing remained live, promising charm, comfort, and an unforgettable experience.
Like and subscribe.